Hello, and welcome to the Men's Lifeline Academy podcast, where we bring on and find the best men out there. Men who have overcome challenges, obstacles in their life. And today, I'll be your host. My name's Zach Goodman, and today I got Jason in the house. Jason has been a counselor for over 30 years, and he recently opened up his own business where now he's helping men fight pornography. That's right. Jason's out here helping men overcome one of the biggest addictions in life. And so we were very blessed to have his appearance. So, Jason, one, thank you for being a therapist and helping people who are struggling with mental health. As we know, mental health crisis is on the rise. Depression, anxiety, loneliness. I mean, there's a reason why they call us the loneliest generation. Jason, why don't you just again welcome to the podcast, and why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, thank you, Zach. I sure appreciate being able to talk with you today. A little introduction to myself. 55 years old, been a counselor, like you said, for about 30 years. I started out in Alaska. I was actually born and raised here in Alaska and got some of my education here and started working in the field here with young people. At that time, it was youth that were being placed out of their homes and were going to have to go out of state for treatment because there just wasn't treatment available here. You know, things like that. And we were trying to keep them here and nurture them and help them grow here. And then in 1997, I moved to Tennessee. And that's where I finished my graduate degree and met my wife there and lived there until 2004. And then we moved back here to Alaska. And so some of the story that I want to tell kind of starts there. So just lay that as a little bit of groundwork. But I'll jump to the end a little bit if that's okay, and just say that you know, I'm a counselor in private practice now in Homer, Alaska. And we absolutely love living here. It's situated on the ocean and all of that. And we can do our boating and have all kinds of adventures here. And my family loves outdoor adventures. And so opened a private practice. And I've been seeing people here for 8 years. And in the first year, after about a year, we went to being full and had to have a wait list. And it's just been, I think God's been blessing it. And it's a wonderful life that we're living here. And my wife was able to retire from the workforce and homeschool our kiddo, which was very important to us. And that, of course, is all part of what I want to tell too. But and now I've written a book to help men quit pornography, and that's a pretty good percentage of what I do. It's not entirely what I do. I'm a general, counselor, and I work with veterans a lot and couples, doing couples therapy. But I also do help men to try to quit pornography. And many times these are men who've been doing it for 10 to 30 years, and it's a big struggle for them. And going to counseling is not usually their first choice. They've already tried a bunch of stuff first. So anyway, that's my current situation. And then hopefully I can tell some of the story that got us there.
No, absolutely. Actually, that's my leading question was, what was that like to make that jump? Like, what led you to go from, like, obviously went to Alaska to Tennessee. So what was that like to kind of go back home? Like, what was that decision to make?
Yeah. Actually, it was an easy decision to make. I loved Tennessee, and I really enjoyed the people there. They're so friendly, and it was just a fun place to be, and good friends there. But I just couldn't get Alaska out of my system. I just love it. It's a thing. I had this great love of the outdoors, and I know there are many beautiful places in the country and in the world, and I've seen some of them, and I love them. But Alaska's in my veins, and just about all I could think about was, when can I move back? I needed to be there, and I needed to complete my degree and do the things that I was doing. But Alaska was on my heart and mind, and I knew I wanted to come back.
Now, how was your wife?
Yeah.
How was that for her to make that transition? I mean, go from Tennessee.
Yeah. There were parts of it that were easy and parts that were hard. Like she was pretty excited about the idea of moving to Alaska.
Okay.
And she was excited about all the travel that we would be doing, because we took a long meandering trip of over 9,000 miles over about 6 weeks. to go to all these national parks and see different things on the way up to Alaska. Um, so she was on board with that, and um, but in a way, she surprised herself with that because she had, before we got together, she had purchased a home and she was building a life, and so this really redirected her in a big way to come up. So I was so glad she agreed to come up because I wanted so badly to come up here. So
Yep. So what's in Alaska that's just in your veins? Is it like the water, the nature, the
yeah, it's
I know
all of that.
Alaska can
It's
be very
great
difficult.
outdoors. It's just like, say, um, when it's hunting time, when we want to go hunting, I do have to drive about 500 miles to get to my favorite place for hunting. But once you're there, and most of Alaska, it's almost entirely wilderness and mountains and just open country. Not necessarily easy to access. It is tough terrain. But when you get up there, where I like to go hunting, you're getting up into tundra areas, and you can go four-wheeling up there, just go off trail and go up to the mountain tops and see for many miles and see just these grand, huge mountains that are just ice peaked and year round, and it's just this huge space that you can go hunting in and go out there and see no civilization. There's nothing there, and that just gets in your veins. And loving living here on the water, we have a boat. I can't imagine living here and not having a boat, because that allows us to almost like leave civilization just at the drop of a hat. Because as soon as you leave the harbor, we leave a boat in the harbor, and as soon as you leave the harbor and you go over to the other side, there just isn't much. It's ocean, it's trees. There's some cabins and some small communities darted through here and there, but they're just very small communities. It's largely just open wilderness country. And so if you love that, and you love the kind of adventure that brings, all the hiking, the skiing, hunting, the fishing, and all those sorts of things, and it just, I don't know, just gets into you. There's a lot of people who take vacations up to Alaska and then end up moving, or people who are stationed in one of the military bases and they end up moving. There's just all sorts of things that draw people up here. So
No, it's definitely a very beautiful place. I know with Alaska, it can be very, very challenging. I mean, what are some of the challenges that you kind of experienced living in Alaska?
yeah, I could take a couple angles on that. I could talk about what it is to kind of like be a counselor here and to live here. To
Yeah, I was kind of going first with like how you live, and
Yeah,
then
how we
going
live.
into
So let me do
council.
that. So
Yeah.
so living here, and let me talk about Homer mainly. So living here is, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit of a throwback in a sense, in that just like some of the very systems that we have, like um, a lot of the homes are older and they don't have great foundations. They're not very weather efficient. They don't meet codes that you would have in many places in the lower 48. The stuff that's made now does, of course, but stuff that was older doesn't. And then we heat with wood and
Hmm.
with propane, or heating oil, and so it's a little different that way, and it requires more. It requires that you gather a bunch of wood and you use that through the winter. We also, another thing that's kind of unique to Homer is we can walk the beach and pick up coal that washes up on the beach and use that in our wood burning stoves and things like that. So we do that for heating. For We can supplement our diets with hunting, and I've often done caribou hunts. That's my favorite one to do, and then we can get good, clean, high protein, good meat that way. Um, so it's a little maybe more primitive in some ways, but we do have internet and stuff like that.
I would
Um,
hope so, or
and
else you have the
yeah,
Starlink or
I
you
know I
have
couldn't
some.
do this. But then just real quickly on being a counselor, some of the things that might be different are, even when I worked at other agencies in Anchorage, and we were initially moved to Anchorage because it's a city of about 300,000 people, and it's completely modern, kind of a city, and that's where all the good jobs are, or a lot of the good jobs are. But even when I was working in those agencies, I worked at one was a native corporation, and so I was privileged to be able to be an itinerant therapist. About 1 week per month, I would go out to different villages and do counseling in those places. And that was a very special experience. I loved that.
What
My
was so special about it? I mean, it's
um,
really cool to go
well,
to different.
the culture is different. I just love the people, and and it's it's like going out to the real Alaska, where in the winter it's going to be 30 and 40 below, and everybody drives around on snow machines, and instead of cars. So there are cars in some of the villages, but um, and it's very a lot of Alaska Native folks, and so there are those cultural differences that you get to work with, and it's very humbling where you get to learn a lot about the people and be accepted in, because it's not automatic that you're going to be able to just come in there as a counselor and, hey, I can help everybody, here I am. It doesn't work that way at all. So you have to be very humble and learn and be accepted. And so I loved that part of the process, and that took a while. It takes patience. um, and so I remember when I would go, I would go very well prepared for very cold weather, especially obviously in the wintertime, because it can be, like you have to fly from village to village. Once you get out there on a decent sized plane, then they put you on. You ever heard of puddle jumpers?
No, explain that.
Just little planes, 206s, 180s, things like that, and they'll fly you. Sometimes they've got duct tape on the fuselage, stuff like
Okay.
that, and they'll fly you out to villages. And you just can't be absolutely certain that everything's going to go the way it should, and you'll get picked up when you get there and all that kind of stuff. So you don't want to freeze while you're waiting, or things like that. So you go prepared. It takes a lot of forethought and preparedness, and so it's it's very different. And I could only go out once a month, so it was itinerant. So you're trying to do therapy and do it at that pace, a once a month pace, and still be productive and fruitful. Um,
Well, especially when you're talking about a whole different culture or way of life, where
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
don't understand how. I mean, how effective were you in doing therapy like once a
Oh,
month?
oh, sure. I got to see that it is effective, but
Okay.
I know, like you do, that the data for a long time has indicated that really, um, on average anyway, once a week for 6 months, it gives you your greatest returns, and then returns begin to kind of drop from there. However, that's just part of the practicality of living in a place like this, is it simply isn't available. And so we have to make the best with what we have available, and do the best you can to be as ethical as possible and to not go outside your scope of practice. But I can't show up there and have someone bring in a 6-year-old that needs help, and me say, no, sorry, I can't help you. That person's too young for me, because you are the only person available. So you just have to seek out someone who can supervise you through that, or something like that. You consult on things like that to make sure you're being ethical. But you do have to be able to do a little bit of everything, and do it less frequently, but still be effective. And so a lot of that comes down to relationship and connection that you have, and the patience that you have in developing it. And it is slower. You just have to accept that there's a slower pace to it.
Okay.
So yeah.
How much time would you spend with each village?
Um, I would spend in the main hub village that I would go to. I would be there for a couple of days, and then do one day in each of the other villages. There was
Okay, so it wasn't like you spend like 2 hours and then take another flight someplace else.
no.
It was kind of
Sometimes it could be like that, but
okay.
most of the time I'd spend a day in the other villages that were close to that hub village, and then they would just put me in one of those small planes and take me over there. So
Okay, that's a
that
little
was good.
different then.
And it's like, it is one of the ways in which you establish rapport is simply by taking walks. You know, walk around, be visible, and then people will eventually get used to you being there and say hello. Otherwise, because you cannot advertise the same way. You can't just sit in the office. You can't. You have to You have to show people you want to be a part of the community.
Well, at least that's one way to stay warm if you're walking.
Yeah, that's true. burning the energy. So anyway, that was some of the Alaska Native work that I did, or the Native village work, and I did that for
That's
like 7 years.
oh
Um,
wow.
and that was right before we moved here um, to Homer. But part of what I wanted to share is is how this even came about in the first place,
Yeah, definitely.
where that we would even come here, and that's part of kind of our testimony. That early on, when we first moved to Alaska, I made sure that I wanted Shannon to be happy here, wanted my wife to be happy here. So I took her to a place I knew she would love even more than Anchorage, which was Homer. So we early in the going, we drove down here and camped, and there's this overlook. Um, Before you descend down into the town, um, there's this overlook that where you can see, just across the inlet, across the Kachemak Bay. You can see volcanoes and islands way in the distance. There's a couple of 10,000 footers. Iliamna and Redoubt are there. You can see all of that. You can see the mountains across the bay, and you can see what they call the Homer Spit. I don't know if you've heard of that, but
No, I haven't.
it's this land feature that goes about 4 miles out into the bay, and the harbor's at the end of that. And then it's just a few miles beyond that, and you can be to the other side of the bay. So you can see all of these things. That's one of the neat features of Homer that makes it a little unusual. So it's got a lot of beach there, and um, she fell in love with it. And so we really kind of knew from that point on that, man, eventually we would really like to be in Homer. And then, so we lived in Anchorage though, just working our professional jobs, trying to make money. We didn't have any kids yet. We didn't think we wanted kids actually at that time. We wanted to travel and do all that kind of stuff. And then once the clock started ticking, and we're getting close to not being able to have kids, we starting to hit that age, we saw the light and realized, what in the world are we doing? We want a kid. So then we started trying to get pregnant, and then it turns out that took a few years. It's not just automatic. We assume these things, but it's not necessarily accurate or going to come true that way. And so we ended up getting help with that and all these medical interventions and things, and none of it worked. And we gave up actually, and we decided, okay, I guess if that's not going to happen, we didn't want to adopt at that time or anything, so we'll just travel instead. And then 3 months later, bam, she was pregnant with our kiddo. And
Whoa.
and so that having a kid is
So just for reference, how old were you when you started trying to when you actually were able to conceive?
when we started trying, I was probably 40
Oh wow.
and 44 when we had her. So my wife was 40, I think, when she gave birth to our kiddo. So we have one daughter, and so it did. It took those 3 or 4 years um, to have our kiddo, and so once we had her, then we discovered all sorts of aspects of our mentality begin to change. We want to think about, okay, what are our values around raising a kid? What do we want? What do we want to try to do here? And so we decided that we wanted to be in church more and raise her that way. And we decided that we would, if at all possible, we wanted my wife to be able to stop working, although she had been in the workforce for like 25 years, and homeschool her, and to be the one primarily raising her. And so, but it wasn't clear to us how to make that happen yet. So what we did is she switched jobs to an internet-based job where she would be able to work from home, and she did that for 2 years, and it just wasn't working out. There was bad communication. It was kind of a poor working atmosphere, and it wasn't enabling her to thrive, and it was just a struggle from the beginning to the end. So while that's going on, my work, I had been at my job for 7 years, and I was loving it, but then that really started to deteriorate too, to where, that I felt like there was just an issue there where I felt like the employer cared primarily about paper and pushing paperwork and not helping people. And it became a huge frustration for me and for them too, because we were becoming not a match.
Right.
And in the midst of that, I'm going to bring all this together. Also, the initial thought about how to move to Homer. It's like, so how do we do that? And I remember my wife mentioning one time we were on a drive. She had this idea, like, why don't we put a building up on our private property, and you can do therapy in that? And my initial, which is really funny, I'm kind of foreshadowing here because that's exactly what's happened, right? However,
Right.
at the time, my response was, well, that doesn't make any sense at all. That is the fastest way to go bankrupt that I can think of. And that was my heart initially. It was like, no, I can't imagine doing that. I can't imagine that working. There's no way that would work. But so, we devoted a lot of prayer to it, and um, we came up with this idea that we would move to Homer and do that. Except we would make it like a couples retreat, and couples would come here, and then I would also get my 6-pack boating license and take people out on the water and do therapy with them and have them stay in that cabin for a week or something like that. And we would try
Sounds
to
relaxing.
help people. And it does. It sounds like this great idea, but I'll flesh out a little more in just a minute on that. But uh, so I was initially resistant, I guess, was kind of the point. And God had to walk me through a process before I would ever get to the point where I would execute what He wanted me to do. But I really
Hmm.
think that we're doing what God wants us to do. So, what ended up happening is we're sitting there in our home in Anchorage one day, and all these things are happening at the same time. The jobs and all that, and the homers on our heart. And then we just start putting pencil to paper and doing some calculations. And we decided that, you know what, it's really close. If we just went to Homer now, then maybe it would work out. And one part that fleshes this out for you, so you can tell that I'm kind of risk averse, right? Like I'm not in a big hurry to just go into business for myself.
Well,
I've
especially
never
when
been.
you're either a reliable hopefully either a 1099 or a W-2 job.
Yeah,
So you're getting a paycheck, you're getting
exactly.
clients,
You always
and
know.
hopefully you don't have to worry about any of the billing because they take care
Exactly.
of all the billing.
Exactly. Exactly. That's one thing about therapy too. Is I think places that we work for would have us believe that that's a really difficult thing, but actually it's really not. I pay for a service that only costs like $65 a month, and all I do is click on a button, and it drops the bill for me. It's really not
Really?
difficult. Yeah, it's really not difficult. That's one of the obstacles that people feel is there to getting into private practice, but it's really not. It's very doable. But so see if I can remember where I was. So we were thinking about, it was the idea of moving here and me being resistant, and how would we overcome that? And um, the bridge that helped us with that was that while I was working at the place I've already told you about, where I was doing itinerant work, um, one of the people that I knew from one of the villages had moved to another village, which was a really more of like a Christian enclave, where it's called Port Allsworth. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's Samaritan's Purse has a program out there, and there's just a lot of things going on out there. It's the type of place where it's way out of the way. It's off the road system. You have to fly to it, but people will make the effort to go there anyway because there's a lot of cool things going on there. And it's only maybe, I forget the population, but I think during the summer it's maybe 500 people. In the
That's
winter
not that
maybe
much.
200. So it's not very many people. But the lady that it was a nurse, and she had moved there to try to serve that community, and she asked me to start coming out and doing some counseling there. The place that I was working for, we thought should have done that, but they refused to do it. So what we ended up doing was doing it on a volunteer basis, and the local community um, uh, had a couple of small airlines, and one of them volunteered to fly me back and forth, and someone volunteered also to let me stay at their place while I was there doing this counseling. So we started doing that, and we did that for a couple of years. And in the course of that, I met another counselor who was in Homer, and she was working for an agency that was expanding from Anchorage to Homer. So I went and spoke with them, and for me, all I was doing was inquiring. I just wanted to talk to them. I wasn't applying for a job. but I walked out of that meeting with a job. They're like, oh, this is perfect. This is of God. You need to go down there. We'll hire you. And so okay, so now that my risk averse personality is like, oh, okay, well maybe we can do this. Maybe we won't go bankrupt. It's still not the private. It's not the private practice version of it, you know. But it gets us to Homer. So so we made that move. So she quit her job there. I quit my job there. We moved to Homer, and we work on getting into a place. That process, I'm cutting that really short. That was a process of a few months, and I'm trying to find a home here, which was not easy. But that's really part of the testimony, is because we were praying about that, and we wanted to be in the right place. It's like, Lord, open up the right place for us, and so that we can be where you want us to be. And we had to look at like 30 different places, which was a lot. We had to put a lot of work into it and try different avenues and options. At that time, the housing market was super hot, so we would pick a house, and then before we could even make an offer, it was already off the market. It was happening really, really fast. And so I believe what happened is the Lord put us exactly where He wanted us in order to be able to do what He wanted us to do, which was the original vision that my wife had put forward that I said no to. So, so we end up in the right house and start business here. And this is just part of the process, the Lord teaching me about myself and helping me grow. So I go to work for this agency, and at the time my wife was not working, and it just was not being successful. The first year, I just had very few clients. I would only see a couple people per week. And as you know, you can't get by on that.
No, not at
Not
all.
making enough money. But we were very invested in trying to make it work. So we did something that some people would consider irresponsible. We took 15%, so it's not all of it, 15% of our retirement, and cashed it out
Oh,
to float us through a year. That would have lasted us about a year. And so we were burning through that, trying to make this work. Business was not increasing at all. It was just dead. And and so that was a really hard period for me.
I can't imagine what your mind's going through, like,
Oh,
especially with how risk averse
yeah,
taking this big
I'm risk
risk.
averse. I've always just worked for other agencies. I've always wanted
Right.
to know what my paycheck was and all of that. But here, um, I was being paid by the session, and so I didn't have a regular paycheck. And so what ended up happening is in that first year, we made $16,000. $16,000, which nobody can live on. You can't have a family in
No.
Alaska. Trust me, Alaska is more expensive than most places. There's probably places in the U.S. that are more expensive, but Alaska's high.
Oh, of course, with
Expensive place to live.
food, electricity,
Yeah,
even those a lot of natural resources.
yeah. Nearly everything has to be shipped, and all of
Yeah.
that. And you're paying for all of that. So,
Oh,
yeah. So that the Lord was really seriously working on my heart there, and revealed to me that I was putting faith in money more than I was putting faith in Him. I was
okay.
putting faith in Him. I had faith in God, but that revealed to me that, and I remember, like we'd take a shopping trip or go to Walmart or something like that. You'd have to drive all the way to Kenai for that. So it was like an 80-mile drive to get to that store. And then so we'd go there, and I just remember feeling like a feeling I'd never felt before, and maybe this is just me being spoiled, probably, is that I felt like when we were in there, I couldn't buy anything. I used to just buy stuff when I wanted it. Very spoiled kind of a way of living, I guess. Not that it was high dollar or rich or anything, but I just didn't really, it wasn't a
Well,
concern.
it's that safety net that you had, that especially
Right,
with your
right.
paycheck, that it's like, okay, I can
Yeah,
splurge a little bit here if I want to have a dessert
yeah,
or I
yeah,
want this little gadget.
yeah. Probably most of us that are working hard can kind of do that, but I
Yeah.
couldn't do that anymore. And that was it's just part of just that feeling of helplessness and weakness. I did not like that. And that was really upsetting to me. And as looking at myself as the primary, provider for our home,
Mhm.
I felt responsible for that, and so a lot of anxiety came with that, and I could not leave it that way. Um, so so the Lord sent us a bridge, which was interesting. Something we could have never imagined. We never would have anticipated this. We couldn't have orchestrated this.
He caught my ear. What happened next?
Now, what happened next was that my wife's previous employer, not the last one where it went badly, but the one
The one
she was
before that.
working with before that, she had been there several years. She was doing IT, working computer stuff with the state,
Okay,
and
so a good high skill job. Okay.
yeah, good high skilled job, professional job, making good money job.
Mm-hmm.
They approached her and asked her to do a remote contract where she could work 20 hours a week and do it from home. And
Whoa.
so we did that, and it was a good contract. And then that, because the retirement money was coming to its end, and we weren't going to do that again.
Well,
And so,
yeah.
yeah, that has limitations to it, right? We're not going to burn through our retirement to try to make something like this happen. So then, so she did that for a couple of years and was able to work uh, 20 hours a week and homeschool our kiddo. Technically, our kid was still young enough that she didn't have to homeschool at that time, but that was the idea. So it was also during that time that we were working on um, the couples retreat idea. So we built a cabin on our place
Mm-hmm.
that had has a nice view and everything. And our daughter at the time, she was just like 3 or 4 years old. She's out here helping us do the finish work. We ended up doing all the finishing touches ourselves, all the walls, the floors, the ceiling, and everything. We did a lot of the work ourselves as a family, and so that was a good, family adventure that helped us, be more unified as a family. It was awesome. And
Well, it's
so,
good to have those high skill jobs, that skills that you have to be able to do all those fine tuned touches. That's not easy.
right, no, it was not easy. It was a lot of work. We made our way through it though, and we started in 2019. We started me doing private practice after the initial business idea had completely bombed. The um, I had one customer in a year and a half. Even though the idea sounds great, and when I describe it to people, everybody's like, "Oh yeah, that sounds
I
awesome.
mean, they made a whole movie
I'd love
about
to
that.
do that." Yeah, yeah,
Couples for two with Vince
yeah.
Vaughn.
When it comes down to spending your bottom dollar on it, that's not what people wanted. Or perhaps it wasn't the right time, or we weren't advertising right, or who knows? There could be any number of other reasons. But it just flat was not working. I'm making 16,000 a year. She's having to do this contract, which was time limited. It's going to be for 2 years, and so we're still on a clock here.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so, so the remember, I'm still working as a counselor for this other agency, but only doing like 2 appointments per week. So they found out that I was starting to do some private practice here. And then they told me, look, that is a conflict of interest. You cannot do that.
I was going to say
Right.
companies don't like when they
Right.
find out
Yeah,
that
they
you
don't
have.
like that. So they
Well,
figured out. They figured I was. What's that?
was going to say that's interesting though because you're only seeing two people a week,
Yeah, 2 people a week. So that's
and they
not
still found that to
right.
be.
Right.
It's not like you're taking that and now have zero people. I mean,
Exactly.
that's
Well, and not to kind of like, and I haven't named the agency, and I don't want to say anything negative or bad mouth
oh
them at all. That's not what I'm trying to do.
no,
But
absolutely not.
I did have a coworker. Remember the lady that was the connection to that job, and one day she called me and said, "Man, my schedule is full. How are you managing right now?" And I said, "My schedule has two." What do you mean you're full? So the agency was divvying up cases, but it wasn't evidently even. And so I was starving, and the other person was doing well, and so it just stuff unfolds that way
And
sometimes.
no supervisor call that this person has like let's say 20 a week and you have two a week,
Yeah,
and there's a pot of 30 people,
yeah.
let's say.
There were definitely some failures going on there. Yeah. So that was just another of the
Boggles my
factors.
mind
So
a lot.
my risk averse personality looks at that um, and looks at the fact that we're making 16,000 and the fact that, well, my wife has this great contract, but it's only going to last for 2 years. We decided, well, going into private practice, this might be the moment because going into private practice actually seems more secure all of a sudden than working for this agency.
I'm pretty sure with your experience, you can get more
Right.
than 2 people a
Yeah,
week.
exactly. So it didn't take anything really. And I'd gone all around town and introduced myself to everybody in the field, everybody that might make a referral. So I was trying to make myself as well known and as connected as possible.
I was smart.
And, and then I went through the process of getting on insurances. I went ahead and did that myself. That is a little bit of a process at first, but
Yeah, I have a friend that started his own
yeah,
private practice,
yeah,
and he told me the whole credentialing process
yeah,
took
yeah.
a long.
Initially, it's that part is tough, but once you're in, it's easy. That's when you get to the point and click part of it. And so, um, so I did that, and I started seeing people here in this office that I'm sitting in right now, actually, and um, it took about a year, and I was full. And then I've had a wait list ever since then. So that was in 2019 to 2020. By the time 2020 comes around, I'm completely full, and I have this wait list, and have never had a lack of work since then.
Even with COVID and everything, I know COVID probably gave
Yeah,
it more security,
yeah. Even
especially.
with COVID, that was interesting, and maybe this is sort of like a local Homer thing, small town thing, maybe not necessarily Homer, but small townish. A lot of people still wanted to meet in person and
Oh,
just
really?
observe guidelines. Some people would come in masks. I would wear a mask if they wanted me to. I would clean up very thoroughly between every session. With some people, I would do the VC. So whoever wanted teleconference would get teleconference. But there was plenty of people at that time who still wanted to be in person if we just observed some basic protocols. More than 6 feet away. My chairs are a little bit more than 6 feet away anyway, and just things like that. So we were able to continue functioning through that. And then, though there were plenty of, I know some people here who went telemedicine and kind of like never went back. Some people still just do telemedicine because for whatever reason.
Few people
Yeah,
that personally took a job because it'd be all
really.
telehealth.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
is just not me. I need in person, and the people that come to me are the same way. But yeah, some people have done that, and I still do telemedicine appointments when people want that, but that's not my main mode. So yeah, even through COVID, and actually after COVID, there was a spike that never went away. That it's not just me; it's other counselors in the community. Everybody has like a 6 month wait list. It's just not. There's not enough of us to meet the need. There's a big need.
Well, I think there's even less people even going into. Well, there's a few factors you can. I would love to hear your opinions, but from what I've heard, one, people are having a hard time passing the test. Um, where I'm at, they changed the testing where now you have to wait 2 years and then take the test.
Oh wow. Okay.
Where you talk to anybody and everybody, they're like, "Why would you wait? Take it now because you're gonna put your experience into the test." And then, like a couple years ago, the state I'm in, they changed that. So now it's just for everyone was a known fact where just take the test, then get your 2 years experience, and then you're fully licensed to. No, now we're going to change it to waiting and then taking, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know
Well,
how Alaska's set up.
Alaska was. I think it was just a timing thing, because when COVID happened, they completely eased all of the regulations on becoming a.
Really?
Yeah, the, you you pretty much just had to apply. There wasn't a test or anything that was even done at that time. You just apply, and they verify, and you can do telemedicine. And
Now, is
that,
that because, like, I know with Alaska, there's such a high rate of depression, no one really
yeah,
wants to kind of go there unless you want to work with people who are having thoughts of self harm and isolation and
well,
things like that. I mean, is that what you're seeing as a reason for that, or?
that's a great comment and question, because Alaska is unique in that way, in that it is very spread out, and very small percentage of Alaska is on the road system. So it they have to be able to deal with helping people remotely, um, probably way more than most communities would need to be able to do, because otherwise, most of Alaska simply would not receive care. So it is just a practical issue where they have to make it more accessible to people in villages. So That's probably one of the factors. Yeah.
Well, I like how they made it easy so that way people had more of a reason to go to school and to spend all that money and that dedication to helping people, especially if you talk about people who are just isolated. So, I mean, I don't have to tell you of how hard it is to see isolation and everything.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And there's a lot of alcoholism, and like you had mentioned, there's a lot of suicide. I think the suicide rate in Alaska is 2 to 3 times higher than in what we call the lower 48. And
Yes.
the I work with a lot of military. There's a lot of military guys up here, and they also their suicide rate is 2 or 3 times higher than the norm.
Oh,
And Alaska Natives, especially young Alaska Native men, are very high. I forget what the number exactly is, but it's even higher than that. The suicide rates are very high, and so a lot is done to try to alleviate that. And care is needed, and so um, absolutely do the best we can with what we have. So
well, that's why we need people like you in the mental health field who's on the battlegrounds
yeah,
trying to literally save lives, whether it's veterans who, I want to say the numbers, well, every 22 seconds, like a veteran, or is it 22 seconds or 22 minutes? I always get that. I think it's seconds.
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but it's high. Like
Yeah, I know it's 22. I'm just trying to remember if it's minutes or seconds right now where a veteran takes their own life.
the VA is good about that. I don't know if it's the same in every state, but they will okay enough sessions for a man for a year or a person
Oh,
for a
wow.
year that they don't have to continuously go back and ask for more. So that if you have a need where it becomes a crisis, you can just schedule to see your counselor more if you need to. And then, that does happen. And I think it's largely about that, about suicide prevention. It's probably actually financially practical for them to allow for as much therapy as a person needs than it is to deal with what happens if you don't.
I can't imagine, especially for a veteran. What are you seeing in the young men that are leading them to want to like end their life
Yeah.
and take their own life? Well,
Well,
what are you seeing in that?
speaking about Alaska Natives in particular, that I'll be speaking in broad sweeps here. You know, I was born and raised here, but I'm not an Alaska Native, but um, been around for a long time, and there was basically an invasion of their culture
Hmm.
where there were phases that were awful for them, where the Russians had it before the U.S. had it,
That's true.
and
That is
so
very.
Russian Orthodoxy was pretty pervasive in the area, and even after the U.S. had it, there were periods of time where they weren't even allowed to speak their own language. If you can imagine that, someone comes into your place and tells you you can't speak your own language anymore. Some people were removed from where they lived and put into schools and things like that. There was a time when kids, since they couldn't be educated in their villages, were just taken and put in boarding schools, stuff like that. And all of this is being done to you. It's not, and then the culture shifts to where there's, for whatever reasons, there's a very much more productive role for women. There are things for women to do that are helpful to their communities, but the men have been completely taken out of their original role. They're not hunting, they're not protecting, they're not having those roles that were healthy for them. Now they become, well, what is my point? What is the purpose? I got nothing. I got no status. I got no reason. I got nothing. And there's lots of drinking to add to that, which is exacerbated and worsened by it. And so then they have this hopelessness, purposelessness, faithlessness, and nothing. And that leads, so young men, they're in that period of life where they have a lot of energy, a lot of expectation, a lot of testosterone. They need to do and to be purposeful, and they didn't have that, and so that energy ends up being converted into something really bad, and sometimes that's suicide. They can't see another way out, and so the rates. I wish I could tell you that some of the numbers I have are old, but it was something like 6 to 8 times the average rate of suicide in that population group. And I think it's largely for those reasons. So,
So, how do you, as a counselor, how do you help rediscover like a language? How do you help rediscover hunting and that? thrill of.
Oh yeah, yeah.
How do you
Actually,
do that?
I know. Well, there's only so much I can do, but I loved the part of being out in the villages with them and being able to be an encouragement to young men because I would get to see young men in counseling and to try to help them discover some of that. It's maybe they needed a helping hand or a bridge or just another man to help them up and to be a leader maybe for them in some ways or an example to lead by invitation and example and to offer them the idea that they can even if a purpose hasn't been handed to them they can figure it out and do it to help a person go from feeling hopeless and helpless to being empowered and having energy to be able to move forward is definitely part of what I was doing. And so hopefully I was successful, at least in some cases, with folks. That was a significant part of what I was trying to do.
Well, and you're still doing it. I mean, you're still out there trying to help these men who are now battling porn, who have had no access to the
Right.
internet and
Yeah.
magazines.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. And that's a lot of my work now. So I don't work in the villages anymore. So that was a thing of the past. So that ended 8 years ago when we came here. But I continued to volunteer in Port Ellsworth for a couple of years after that, but that tapered off
also,
as well. And so now I just focus my entire practice here, and now I'm attempting to branch out and be more helpful to more men when it comes to eliminating pornography from their lives. So that's why the book. That's why that's my main mission in doing things like podcasts or being on social media like X and so forth. I actually don't like being on social media. I don't like it. That's not what I want to do with my time. But it's important, I guess, to reach out and to try to expand the audience. I feel like I've learned some things from the counseling with these men and through all my research. I think I've been prepared to live in both worlds, kind of, where I can translate between our faith, the Christian faith, the Bible, men of God, and men of science, and people who believe only in that. And because I have dealt very much with both worlds and have the ability to translate between the two. And I think that there's a lot that is scientifically generated that does not contradict the Bible.
mhm.
These two things can be used in conjunction, and that's part of what I'm doing in my book is to demonstrate that, and that there's things that we've learned from research that are very useful, and but we can do that and still be consistent with the Bible, which is the most important, infallible source of truth. So that's my view on it. And then I think that because of my life and how I have my education is entirely secular, it is entirely just the standard degrees. Born and raised in a Christian family, and I've been discipled by pastors and so forth to know the word as much as I can, and then to be able to synthesize that together for good use to help men get off of pornography. So I put that together with my training and my counseling experiences with these men specifically, working with them to help them get free from porn, and put that together in a book. And so that's one of my current missions is to serve more, to increase them, to scale it up, to serve more people.
Well, I love where your heart is at as serving people. I mean, that's the heart of a servant leader, like really trying to put others first and provide the tools, resources to people. And who says you can't combine the two, right?
Yeah, I think you can.
I mean, if we look at all the science and data, when you include culture, when you include language, and when you include the person and who they are, I mean, if you do basic CBT, I've always seen the stats increase at least by 10%. So if CBT is affected by 75%, you include the language, the culture, and everything, it becomes 85% effective.
Right, right. Which
And
is
so with you doing that and helping the men trying to rediscover who they are, I mean, you're just
yeah,
taking that into the next level.
yeah,
That spiritual point.
yeah, exactly. I love that. This is, I think, very valuable to be doing. And so I think it's what to go back to the first part of the story, is that where we've ended up is exactly what I think the Lord wants us to be doing. And I feel that way every day. Is like, okay, I'm doing what the Lord wants me to do. This is it. do this. And it's a really nice feeling to have that. Not everybody has that. A lot of people are searching. And so um, it's a huge blessing. Feel like you've found the right spot and are doing it.
Amen to that. And Jason, I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast.
You bet.
Definitely got to bring you back again at some point.
Yeah, I would love to come back.
So, and I'm glad you're on social media. I know you don't like it, a little bit risk averse, and yet
Right.
going outside that comfort zone to come out and speak to somebody. So, if you have value out of this podcast, make sure, first of all,
Yes.
you gotta go check out Jason. Both his socials, if you're in Alaska, his business will be in the description below to go support him.
Thank you.
And so if you need help, there might be a list, and it's better to be on a list than no list. Better get to say, hey, I need some help than say I don't need any help at all, which we all know that's a lie. And so go support him. So seriously, go check him out. Go support him, see what he's all about. And if you like him, make sure you follow him too. And then, if you got value out of this podcast, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this to help someone else in need, someone else who wants to know what it's like to get some help, especially from a trained counselor like Jason on this podcast. And so let us know below, what will you do today to seek out help? On this podcast, we're all about call to actions, about doing something that we can do today. So let us know. Let me and Jason, because I'll let Jason know. Jason, go on here, go look it up. Let us know how you will seek out help. Will you call a therapist? Will you call 988, which is the National Suicide Hotline number? That you can call that number and it will be directed to where you are in your state. So there is hope. There is different ways that you can do it. So let us know what you're willing to do to get yourself some help today, so that way you don't have to struggle anymore, especially if you're a guy out there needing some help. And if you want some extra encouragement, extra lessons, we have the Men's Lifeline Discord group that's here to help support you. And it's available to men who are driven, who want to excel in life. And if you meet those criteria, let me know and we can meet and see if you're a right fit for the group. So above all else, Jason, thank you for taking your time today and coming on the podcast. We appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zach. I really appreciate it too. I'd be happy to come back if I ever get the chance.
Yeah, well, we have your whole business of how you help men quit pornography, and then I would love to get a copy of your book to read it so we can discuss it and highlight it here when it comes out.
Thank you.
So until next time, my friend.